My name's Todd Morr, and I live on the south end of Tacoma. I've lived there about 6 years with my wife and 4 children. We have a 10-year-old boy and 8 and 5 and 4-year-old girls. We've been leading a missional community on the south end these last 6 years and helped lead a group of missional communities on the south end. And I want to share some of what we've been learning and thinking about as far as what is a missional activity. From our experience these past years, I've seen a lot of tendency, even for us, to drift, just drift into this mode of being with people, but just kind of hanging out with people. So we're grilling, and we're at the park, and we're having parties with people and doing good things, doing good relational activities. But sometimes there's just the tendency to not bring much intentionality to those relationships and to what we're doing. And so when we think about what is a missional community, just want to be clear that the word missional is connected to the word mission. And so when we think of the mission, our mission is to make disciples. Our mission isn't just to be with people. Our mission is to make disciples. And ultimately, in order to do that, we need to move relationships to a point where we're proclaiming Jesus. So as we think about what that means and what some of the practical implications or details are, I think a lot of it boils down to pursuit, and really pursuing relationships to a depth that moves them from just being acquaintances with people to being true friends with people. That's a big one that we've come to learn. Again, our tendency, I think, partially naturally, partially just because of our, because of our flesh, is to be with people and just to kind of maintain those relationships at a superficial level and not to move them to a greater depth, because that requires some intentionality, requires some hard work, and some sacrifice on our part. And so what I've seen is some of the barriers or some of the excuses as to why that can happen. Partially it's out of fear of man, honestly, in that as we dig deeper into people's lives, sometimes it can be uncomfortable. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable to ask hard questions and to dig into their lives and to talk about more difficult things beyond just superficial. Also, sometimes I think we're self-protective and kind of selfish. And when we start digging into people's lives, it's going to require us also to be vulnerable and to share more of our lives. And often because of our desire for self-protection, and our desire to not really be known, and just some of our selfishness, we lean back from that and fail to really pursue people's stories deeply. And then sometimes I think we're also just kind of lazy, and because pursuing people in friendship, becoming true friends with people is hard work. It takes time. Takes consistency, takes intentionality, takes vulnerability, and it can be hard work at times. I think especially with guys. I know women have an easier time relating, an easier time sharing their stories and getting deeper into people's stories. For guys, that's often very hard. And so if we're, as guys, going to pursue other men, pursue their lives, pursue their stories, it's going to be hard work. And we're going to have to ask lots and lots and lots, many times, of questions, which requires commitment, requires perseverance to stay in a relationship, even when you're getting short answers or one-word answers from the questions you're asking guys, and you try to get into their story, and you can just tell they don't want to go there. And so to persevere, to work hard in that is commitment, and takes hard work. And so when we are kind of lazy or selfish or self protective, and when we're more concerned about what others will think of us, those are all going to be significant barriers to keeping us from moving relationships from acquaintance to true friendship. So as we think about those excuses and barriers, though, I think there are some things that can help us to move beyond that and can help us better understand this idea of moving relationships from acquaintance to true friendship, and seeing everything that we do with people as true missional activity, true disciple-making activity. One of those principles is just radically blessing, radical generosity towards people. It's a powerful thing. It's very obviously not common in our world today. It's not common in most neighborhoods. It's not common in most towns or cities for people to be generous towards others and to be blessing and serving others. And so that's just an important, not only starting point in our relationships, but something that needs to be at the foundation of our relationships with people. Another one then, building on that, is just this principle of deeply pursuing people's stories. And again, it can be a hard thing to do, especially, I think from my experience, especially with men. It's easy for those relationships and our conversations with other men, or even women sometimes, to stay at like a superficial place, talking about easy things, talking about safe things, not talking about vulnerable things. And so going deep into people's stories is really important, though, to get to know them, to understand how to bless them, how to serve them, to know how to eventually bring Jesus into those conversations and relationships. And so if we are not deeply pursuing people's stories and doing the hard work of asking question upon question upon question upon question at times, our relationships will not progress. They will not move forward. And then as we're going deep into people's stories, we also need to be vulnerable, open, and sharing deeply from our stories. And as we hear people talk about their lives and their stories and different details, we're looking and we're listening and we're asking, where does my story somehow connect or parallel with theirs? How could I bring part of my story into their life, into their story? So pursuing their stories and then sharing deeply from our stories, and then asking the Spirit, and we need the Spirit in everything I'm talking about here, but asking the Spirit to bridge then those conversations, those relationships, bridge them to spiritual things and spiritual conversations. And there's 1,000 different ways that can happen, but it's often quite hard to do that, to see our relationships and our conversations moved into spiritual things. Because the next step, or the next important element in all this, is seeing those conversations then move to Jesus, and the opportunity to truly proclaim Jesus as the answer for everything, for every part, for every need, for every hurt, for every part of their story, as he has been and is for every part of our story. So our relationships need to, again, be progressing from their story to our story, to spiritual bridges into clearly proclaiming Jesus. Because if we're going to make disciples who make disciples, Jesus has to be at the center of it. And so we need to constantly be asking the Spirit for help at the center of all of this, to help us understand how to pursue people's stories, to help us understand how to share deeply from our stories, to understand when and how to bridge things into the spiritual, to know then how to clearly proclaim Jesus in a clear and robust way. And so the Spirit, we know part of his role is as the proclaimer of Jesus. That's part of who the Spirit is. He is a missionary spirit. He's a proclaimer of Jesus. And so we need him for help in all of this, to help us proclaim Jesus in our relationships. And so we need to be praying oftentimes in the moment, in conversations, in relationships with people, even praying in the moment, asking the Spirit, help me now in the situation. I'm listening to this person's story. Spirit, help me speak truth, speak Jesus into this. And so Spirit dependence in all of this is is just crucial. So these elements working together, again, it's not just a step-by-step reality. It's all these things working together of consistently blessing and serving and being generous towards others as we're going deeper into their story, as we're going deeper into our story, as we're bringing little spiritual pieces into our relationships, and then as we're proclaiming Jesus into those things. And so this isn't something usually that happens like one time or 1 week. It's usually over a period of time, sometimes a long period of time, sometimes even years. It's all of these elements working together, which the Spirit often uses to bring someone to Jesus.